There are many arguments against the death penalty. It's not a deterrent against the crimes that it punishes. Society who use the death penalty don't have lower crime rates than those that do. When a country abolishes the death penalty, they are not plunged into criminal chaos. But even if the death penalty did reduce crime rates, would it then be acceptable? The death penalty targets the economically disadvantaged, those who can't afford good legal counsel, those without a voice in society. There's a saying in the US, capital punishment means that those without the capital get the punishment. Statistics show this is true. But would it be acceptable if people from all sections of society were executed? Does killing a rich man make killing a poor man right? The death penalty is irreversible and results in the death of innocents. When someone is dead, a retrospective pardon is of little use to them or their family. Since 1990, in China, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and the USA, there have been 51 recorded executions of child offenders, some as young as 14 years old. But even if no more innocents or children are killed, should we tolerate the death penalty? The death penalty is never acceptable. It abuses two of our most basic human rights. Everyone has the right to live, and no one shall be subject to torture. The death penalty obviously kills people, but it also tortures, physically by the brutal nature of execution, and psychologically by forcing individuals to wait to be killed. They wait, sometimes for decades, while others are led to their deaths. The horror of this waiting is unimaginable. Human rights are thus called because they apply to all human beings. They belong to all of us equally. An attack on these fundamental rights anywhere is an attack against all of us. The right to life is inalienable. It cannot be given, and it cannot be taken away. No matter how terrible the crime, in a world full of uncertainty, human rights are a clearly drawn line, a line between what is right and what is wrong, the line between imprisonment and execution. Every individual facing the death penalty is, whatever they stand accused of, still a human being. However much we revile them, however much we are outraged by their actions, however much we want revenge, they are still human beings. They may well have killed and tortured. They've crossed the line. But do we really want to join them?
The death penalty has been around since man ever created some form of law in their societies. It has been used as a punishment for many things, anything from committing high treason to just being of a certain race. It has been a dark part of man's history since the dawn of man.
In ancient times, the death penalty could be used for a variety of reasons. Whether your party that was trying to be taken over lost, your army was defeated, or the leader for some reason didn't like you, you were often killed instead of imprisoned.
Some types of capital punishment that were used in ancient times are the all-too-familiar crucifixion, forcing someone to ingest poison, or the infamous brazen bowl, in which the victim would be placed inside of a life-size bowl made of bronze that would then be heated, basically baking the victim alive. In the mouth of the bowl were pipes, so the people watching the execution could hear the victim's screams amplified. Often in ancient Asia, the loser of a battle would be forced to commit suicide.
Another form was breaking on the wheel, where the convicted was tied to the spokes of a wheel and beaten till several of their bones were broken. To kill them, their vital organs were beaten. In extreme cases, they would be tied to the wheel and then put outside to where birds of prey could slowly eat them alive.
In Persia, some people would be pressed to death, not by what you would think, like rocks, but by having an elephant step on their head.
Perhaps the form we as Catholics know best was crucifixion. This method was used against Jesus Christ, and is an extremely public and long way of execution.
Medieval forms of capital punishment. Many different, perhaps more gruesome forms of the death penalty were used in medieval times. The guillotine, quartering, hanging, sawing, breaking at the wheel, and the brazen bull were several forms.
The guillotine was used primarily during the French Revolution and involved a falling blade that would behead a convict. These executions were often public.
Quartering was where the victim would have ropes attached to each of their arms and legs, and each end of the opposite side of the rope attached to the animals. And then animals would be released and would pull the victim in the 4 directions until the victim was torn apart.
Hanging, one of the forms most commonly used, especially during events like the Salem witchcraft trials, involved tying a noose around a victim's neck and shoving them off a platform until they would either choke to death, have their necks broken, or be decapitated.
Sawing involved hanging a victim upside down and sawing them in half. Since the victim was upside down, blood flowed to their brain, keeping them alive and conscious longer. This was mainly used in the Spanish Inquisition and was very inhumane.
More recent forms of capital punishment. When one thinks of events in history concerning the death penalty, one of the biggest things that come to mind is the Holocaust. Hitler put millions of people to death just because they were different than him. He used ways such as gas chambers or fire pits. Firing squads were also employed at this time. The Holocaust brought a lot of attention to the horrors of the death penalty. It would affect the ways that modern people use and view it.
In America, the first employed way of capital punishment was the electric chair. Soon, lethal injection was employed. However, since the Holocaust, more and more people have been opposed to the death penalty. Today in America, 70% of people are against it. Perhaps it was the fallen human nature for us to resort to the vengeful way of killing someone as punishment. Is it really law and order?